Hey everyone, it's Katya, and I'm here with my new friend, the amazing artist Caroline Douglas.
Hello.
And hi.
Hi.
Yeah, go on.
Here we are in Boulder, Colorado. It's very bright sun right here.
Oh my goodness, 300 days of sunshine a year. And we are going into the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art, also known as BMOCA, to take a look at Caroline's new exhibit, Caravan of Dreams. Enjoy.
So here's the entrance into the show, and these are 5 porcelain figures that represent patience, generosity, kindness, compassion, and I can't remember the last one. So this is the title of the show, Caravan of Dreams, A Healer's Path, and we will talk more about that as we go in.
So the one that's hanging, what is she representative of?
Compassion.
Compassion.
And don't forget the tiger over here too. It's a little magical doorway for the tiger with the rider. This piece actually came from a dream, and I woke up wanting to make clay float. I'm not sure that I captured that quite, but I'm still working on that idea. And this is the caravan. This is the bridge, the roadway that sort of represents the road that we're all traveling. We have all of our animal friends with us, and our conveyances that take us from one place to another, and there's all these magical beings that surround us. And most of these pieces came actually from dreams as well. And I feel like they represent my own colorful imagination and how I see the world, or how I would like to see the world. There's qualities that I brought in from all my travels. I teach workshops in different countries, in Morocco and Mexico and Hawaii, and I feel like they just inspire me. They crack me up. They bring me a lot of joy. And they're just an expression of how I sort of see the world and what things manifest in my dreams that may want to be made real, made into a material piece.
So when you talk about these beings traveling with us, I'm guessing you mean on a different plane, not the visible.
Well, it's many levels, many planes. There are all the beings that are non-seen, and then there are the beings and animals that are seen.
Yep. So it's a beautiful sort of mixing of worlds, I see. Is that how you feel it when you create
Absolutely. And, there's a dog over here with a bag over his head. So it's like some days that's how it feels. And so I feel like for me, creating these pieces was an act of, well, of course, expression, but also a diary. Is like a diary of my day-to-day experiences and feelings and things that came up for me. And how this is another vision I had of a person floating above an animal. The feeling that I had in that dream was being floated by divinity. It was the animal was padding through the forest, and at first it was a fox, and then it became a tiger, and then it became a seal in the water. And I have been trying to capture that feeling. I don't think I quite got it with this buttress, but it was really fun to make that. Clay is earth. Clay is from the earth, and it's like a heavy, solid thing. And so to make it appear light is sort of a contradiction and a fun challenge that I've been working on. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. Shall we walk a little over to the far end and to the other side of the room?
And this, I actually make quite a number of boats because I feel like they signified for me, just this journey we're on. We're always flowing from one shore to the other. And it can be joyful and magical. It can also be all kinds of different things, but these make me appreciate the joyful part.
Mm-hmm. And are the animals in the boats, are they representative of us and our characters? Are they representative of, like you were saying, our companions along the voyage? What do they represent to you?
They can be specific people, but mostly I think that they're more of an energy. You know, there's the reptiles. There's the reptiles that sort of are the reptilian brain part of us in this, survival mode. Then there are the fluffy animals that are a different aspect of us. I don't consciously think of these in that way when I'm making them. For me, art comes through. It's more like channeling in some way. It's more like being an open vessel to what really wants to come through. And I feel an affinity with animals. They were with me in my dreams. They have been for my whole life. So I feel like making them is sort of somehow making them sacred in my life. Creating them physically and turns that magic into something that is real that I can share with others.
Beautiful. Is she face down?
I'm sorry?
Is she face down, floating?
Yeah, she was sort of floating, diving a little bit. Some of them have masks on, and I feel like masks have just been a huge part in the art world, a huge part of how communities express their spirituality. So, and I feel like masks are a way to discover different aspects of who we are and to become more aware of what mask might I have on today. And the awareness is key. I feel like masks are, one way of just being more aware of who we are. And also being aware of how people operate in the world. And it also really helps you has helped me master my intuition in some strong way, just to be more aware of who I am and what I'm projecting and how I'm just owning the ground I'm standing on.
That's interesting. So there's a sort of a distinction that you're making between who we really feel ourselves to be, maybe on a deep level, but also there's the outer face, the face that we're showing.
I feel like the art that I feel is most authentic is so true to my being that there's really no question. I'm not in a place of doubt. I'm being a little confusing here, but some pieces that come from a real strong and powerful emotion are so authentic they can't help themselves almost. But then there are other pieces that are more fun or lighter or more playing in this world of illusion.
Yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying. And in astrology, like we would talk about having the sun sign and the rising sign even, and the mask being the rising is very much a part of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And here you have even animals wearing them, which is a beautiful idea. Very unique. Okay, so where are we going next, Caroline?
So I just want to point this one piece out. I did a symposium in Serbia a few years ago, and we worked with clay that we dug up from the caves that were used in the war where people, hid. And we dug the clay and we stomped it with our feet and mixed it with calcite, which is like ground up crystals.
Uh-huh.
And these little pieces here are crystals that I embedded in the clay.
Wow.
And then we smoked them, which is the traditional way that they did it, the pottery back then, where we put them in a pit and put wood over them and then just burnt the fire for not even an hour. And then when they came out, they were finished.
Amazing. So that one has cultural context. It has all this history behind it. Amazing. So this is the caravan.
This is the caravan.
And they're all together too, aren't they? In the caravan.
Yes, they're all together.
Ooh-wee. Hello. So this guy's the leader.
He's the leader. Yeah.
Was that a conscious choice? I mean, I'm imagining everything was. At least.
What did you say?
Was that a conscious choice to make this guy the leader?
Yes, it was. I'll just say yes. The curator had played a big part in constructing the view, how it was going to be set up, which I think this is just a brilliant way to show these carts in the caravan.
Absolutely. Gorgeous. I've seen your work before, and seeing it in this caravan is just adding a whole other layer. It's so
Thank
neat.
you. Yeah. It's fun. So now let's go over and see the cloud.
All right.
This piece is called Conveyance.
Here it is, folks. Conveyance. Okay.
And I see these hanging animals as being transported, from one magical realm to another magical realm where their magic might be needed.
Wow. All right. And so behind the cloud on the other side of the room, is this a continuation of the cloud, or is it a different piece, would you call it?
No, I wouldn't say it's a continuation of the cloud. This is more a symbolic representation. We called it the edge, and it's the place that's not black and white. It's where the shadow lives. It's where the subconscious has its deep feelings, deep knowing, deep pain even. And this place is mostly a powerful place where this authenticness that I was talking about is represented and expressed.
Yes. And
It's the realm of shamans. It's the realm of birth and depth.
yes. And so, there's a real power that I'm feeling in my body looking at this part. It's very different from the rest of the exhibit. And it has a different quality. And you might even at first glance interpret that feeling, or I might, as a sort of fear. What would you say about the importance of this realm?
Did you use the word fear?
Yeah, I did. And yet I'm getting from you a sense that this is an important realm not to overlook or just relegate to like, oh, that's scary and bad. We shouldn't be talking about that. Or looking at it. It seems like there's a reason that you honor this.
Well, honestly, several of these pieces that I feel are most powerful were made as, you could say, a process piece, more in reaction to an emotional event that I had that I worked out through the artwork. This piece here, actually, the woman, wolf, giving birth, I made in reaction to a man. I was young, this was 30 years ago, a man who tried to accost me. And I just was so enlivened by these heavy, strong emotions that making this piece was healing for me in a deep way. Just as in really taking my power back, feeling like not really working through the emotions of being frustrated and humiliated and scared, and using all of that energy, because it's just energy, into this clay piece. And clay is so magical anyway, because it's when you push it, it changes, and then it changes you back. This is how I experience it. And then in the end, it just felt like all those emotions were not in me anymore, they were outside of me. And the process of creating it and making it with the clay, where, you know, my heart and hand and brain were all working together to create that.
Amazing. This is part of human experience, all of this.
It's all part of the human experience. Yeah. And, you know, oftentimes we hide from the shadow or from our subconscious or our habit patterns, but they are what sort of keep us stuck. And I feel like the more we can create and live in that land of creativity, which is seeing things with curiosity and a sense of wonder, all of these feelings are just part of being human.
Wow. What an honor. What an honor to see all this work. Thank you for showing it to us.
Welcome.
And
yes.
We're going to go sit down now.
Okay, we're here. We're here, Caroline. It took us a little while to get everything right, but I'm so happy. I really, I'm happy because I came and I saw you with my family at Open Studios, the wonderful Boulder Open Studios at the beginning of mid-October.
Yeah.
Great event. Great event. If anyone has an Open Studios in their town, or or you live in Boulder, it's an amazing thing also to do with family. But we came. It was my daughter's choice. She's the artist. She's one artist in the family. She's incredible. She picked it in the catalog. She said, "We have to go see this."
Oh, that's great.
And we came and we were all blown away.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely true. And, my experience was that we walked into your house and the first was like, whoa, I've never seen anything like this before. And then progressively, it was like being drawn into a tunnel, through a tunnel into a different world. And before I knew it, I was with every piece that I looked at, and you have a huge body of work.
There's a lot of art in my house.
Yep.
Yeah.
And progressively, I was getting more and more drawn in to this this world that is made up of dreams, and we'll get into that more. But so I've been wanting to ask you, in particular, some different questions, particularly about why is art important. So that's really the basis of this show, and we'll go some different places there. But first, will you just give us a little introduction, a little bio?
You want a bio?
Just to, like, the small things so far. We'll get into the big story.
Well, I'm going to just speak personally, from my experience. I find art is really important. It helps me connect with my groundedness. It helps me create, express my feelings. It helps me to find joy in life. It really, it's been my passion and my purpose for my whole life, and I feel like it has brought meaning not only to myself but to others who I get to share it with.
So you started, take us back to the beginning. When did you start?
I've always been
making
an artist. I mean, when I was a child, I was always drawing and creating costumes and doll clothes and, theater, all kinds of things.
So you were in touch with your human capacity to create.
I feel like, yes, that was where I spent a lot of my time, in my imagination also. And then when I was in high school, I took a pottery class, and it was like, oh my, these are my people. It was just clay, it was earth. It made me feel like I belonged, and it was just easy to move it and make something out of it. So I felt like it was just a great way for me to connect with my own inner self.
Did you feel like you were missing the earth element?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. I felt like, I've always lived a lot in my imagination, in my dream life anyway. And so this was just a way to physicalize what I was dreaming about.
So you were making dreams even in high school when you started pottery?
Yes, I think so, in a very simplistic way.
Okay.
Until later in my life, when everything changed.
So let's start to go there a little bit. Okay, so take us along that little road. So you were making art, you were an artist, you had, tell us, how'd you get there?
So I actually went to college and got a degree in ceramics, and then from North Carolina moved to Boulder, Colorado, and became a mountain woman, back in the hippie days, and did pottery, got a studio right away and tried to make a living, and I did to a certain extent, and I was sort of living the life.
Were you making sculptures already? Were you making dinner
in the
plates?
beginning, it was more functional, and it was more, they were still animals, but they were very simple, let's say. And I always loved the work of primitive cultures, or cultures that are really close, close to nature. So some of that came into my work a little bit, and I did animals always, but they were very simple, I'll say. So then, fast forward I got married, had children, and they were growing up, and I was decorating. Actually, I had an accident. I was decorating the gym at my daughter's school, and I was on one of those extension ladders, a cherry picker type of thing, and the locking mechanism wasn't in place, so it collapsed and crushed my head from front to back. And that was the accident. My son was there in the room watching, and I had no idea, what years of recovery that would look like. It was so challenging. I had to relearn how to talk, and every day I would faint like 20 times, so it was difficult to walk. And when I did walk, I would fall, and I broke my hand, and I broke more things. And so it just physically, it was a challenge to get myself back enough so that I could do any artwork.
And so when that happened, when you actually fell, do you have memory of that experience? Were you totally unconscious?
This is what I remember. Before the thing even fell, everything went to slow motion. And everything was in slow motion, and I knew that this was an important moment. So
Interesting.
Then before the thing crushed my head, I left my body I left the top of my head, and I was in the corner of the room watching. Oh, hello.
Hello, little guy. We've got lots of little guys.
So, and from above, I saw my body, my head get crushed and fall to the ground. And it was this amazing, expansive place where I felt blissful.
Wow.
And I was actually surrounded by white light. I didn't see a tunnel, but um, I felt like this is okay. There's not a problem. This is fine.
Wow.
Everything is meant for a reason, and there's no need to worry. It was extremely blissful. Then I heard a voice inside say, "You have a choice." And it wasn't like, I heard it out here, but I was part of the air anyway. So I heard a voice say, "You have a choice." And I was hesitant. And I really hung out there.
And it was a choice of to come back
Yeah.
or not to come back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then as I looked down on the floor and saw my body and my son with his eyes about this big, I said, I have to stay. I have to stay. If I have a choice, I'm staying.
So can I ask you about that moment? So when you had that choice, was it like you have a choice and if you stay, you need to do this body of work and do this and this and that? Was it simple? Stay or go?
Stay or go.
Okay.
Stay or go.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even think about, there was no thinking. It was more like just following my intuition and trusting that it would all work out.
Wow.
I mean, if I had my wits about me and thought, that body doesn't look so good.
Right.
I don't know if I want to go there, but it was my son who brought me back. It was I gave him birth, but he saved my life.
Amazing.
If he hadn't been there, don't think I would have chosen.
Wow.
Yeah.
So while all of this was happening, what some would call, probably maybe the biggest crisis event of your life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was a near-death experience, yeah.
And while this was happening, you were in a place where you actually felt that everything was all right and that this was happening for a reason.
Yeah, I was like, in that place out of body, I was just so blissful is the only word I can think of.
Yeah.
Really. And
Amazing.
so, coming from in the body experience being a totally different thing, it was like, wow, this is really different. So then after that, I went to all kinds of rehab and I didn't sleep for like a year and my body shook. And I also would find myself sitting in circle with people who have died. And they would tell me stories or they would tell me jokes or they would tell me how to heal myself. And so I feel like I had one foot in this world and one foot in that other world.
So you were people who had died and come back, or people who were on the other side?
Other side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you think that you would ever make art again? Did you think that you would ever work with clay?
I didn't, at that point in my life, I was 45 and I already had been doing it for years. And I didn't question it. I just knew that where I am in the moment right now, became extremely curious. And I, would just really feel within and try to have awareness of where my body was in space. And half the time it felt like my head was 12 feet above my body and that I was looking through a cereal box with holes poked in it. That's the way it felt. But I didn't think, am I going to do clay? I didn't think, who's going to make dinner? I can't make dinner. It was a very limited thinking.
Got it. That function was not dominant.
The main thing. So then I started having these dreams. And as soon as I was able to sleep through the night, I started having dreams, and they were not like normal dreams. Well, I mean, they became normal for me. They were like a lazy Susan, where I would see a clay piece, and it would turn, and I would see all 360 degrees of a piece.
Wow.
Yeah, or is that what you're saying? Or is it 180?
Yep. 360.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would wake up and want to create that in clay. And at that point, I couldn't lift my arms and all kinds of things I had to heal. But my husband would pull out clay from a bag of clay. And at first, it was just like the size of a baseball. And I would just poke holes in it with a pencil.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I did. And in the beginning, but the dreams were still percolating, and they were still like of these amazing finished figures and animals, big, you know.
Wow.
So little by little, I was able to create all these pieces.
And so was there a part of you that was like longing to have the capacity to make what you were seeing? Was it, you know, what was that like?
No,
No.
not really, because I didn't have the wherewithal to think like that. It was more, okay, I poked holes in this clay, and that was very satisfying. And now I have to take a nap.
Yep. Okay.
And it just evolved, you know, and then it became animals. And then it became the animals would visit me in the backyard, and I would spend a lot of time in a rocking chair just watching the deer and the fox and the raccoons and the eagles and the birds. And then I think they started visiting me in my dreams. And so I would see like a figure, you know, cradling a wounded hawk or something. And I got so that I would be just making, I knew anatomy. I mean, just after my head injury.
Amazing.
And just like, they just came forth, like sort of with an urgency to be made. I mean,
you mean you understood anatomy after your head injury? It was like downloaded.
Yeah.
So it's almost kind of like you yourself were like rebuilt or remade, it sounds like, and the way that you process.
Well, I actually put together a little book of poetry and my early work in my healing, and called it how an artist rebuilds her life when clay, because I feel like the clay, working with the clay, I did so many therapies and they worked to a point, but working in my own studio with the clay, with my head and expressing everything, helped the synapses of my brain come back into balance.
Yeah.
And actually the neurologist, Robert Scare, who I was working with, wrote a book called The Trauma Spectrum, and he put photos of my work in there and talked about how an artist used alternative methods to heal herself.
Amazing.
And it just really helped me to get my speech back and be able to, you know, organize myself in a way that was even maybe better than before.
Wow. Okay. That's a great, I wouldn't have thought of that question.
Right.
So you feel like you're better than before?
I do. I feel like it was a long 10-year journey. I felt I did a lot of work. I did a lot of inner work and went to other people too. But I think that working in my studio with the time alone and the dreams that were created and working with my hands, it's a huge part of that healing.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. So let's see. I have questions like, but I'll slow myself down. So, okay. With everything that you've been through, you got to feel and live from the inside why art is important. I mean, clearly, it healed you, right?
Exactly.
It restored you. So, what about the healing potential of, well, let me backtrack a little bit. So, okay, we live in a time right now where there's great turbulence, I think we can agree, right? In a larger scale, social, political, economic, you name it. And, you know, for someone who doesn't have a foot in the art world, or who hasn't experienced for themselves why art is important, you know, we've seen throughout history that arts get relegated to kind of, you know, they get put on the back burner when we think or perceive that there are more important, you know, inverted commas, things going on. But I wonder if that's really true. You know, I wonder if there really is actually a great role for art in times like this that can be very healing. And I wonder, you know, what you would have to say about that.
Well, mainly with that question, I would just go back to my own personal experience. Art and creativity heals. I mean, it did for me on a real personal level. But I also feel like people, in a general sense, are sort of I feel like everyone is creative. It's what you're born with. There's this innate creativity that you're born with. From the whole issue of evolution, you know, everything has been created on, and we're in this sort of flow of creation. Whether we label it as art or not, it's not the issue. The issue is for people who are not that, who feel like they're not artistic or they're not in the art world. My suggestion, so I teach workshops in different parts of the world, and just my joy, it brings me so much joy to help people open up to their creativity, especially people who don't think they have any. I do exercises, you know, and we start a little bit with the intellect, because that's where most people can start from, and that's where the fear resides. Once they get into work showing up really with their materials, that's where the magic happens. They surprise themselves always. I even have them list their 5 top inner critics, and then we make them, you know, they're all kind of nervous and don't want to admit it, and then I say, okay, now we're going to make them into finger puppets. So everybody makes their inner critics into finger puppets, and then we do a little play, and it's like at the end of the day, it's hilarious. So it's almost like proof that you can be creative with anything.
So you,
even your inner critics.
Even your inner critics.
And my husband is a musician. He had once had a rubber band. It was the best rubber band in the land. I mean, rubber bands becoming, you know, like.
What do you mean? Like he was making music with rubber bands?
His musician friends had rubber bands, and they had a band, and they played music with their rubber bands.
Only rubber bands?
Only rubber bands.
Wow. Okay.
So,
how long did that last?
I don't think too long, but it was really creative. And you can create with anything. And you know, So, so back to what people might do, I suggest. This is sometimes I give as homework or home fun. Really, before you go to sleep, really look and think about what 2 or 3 things that you did that day that was creative. Or if you can't think of anything that you did creative, I'm sure there are many.
Yeah.
Like, you know, how you set a table, how you cook a dish, how you drive your car.
Yep.
So basically, it's about awareness. It's about helping people become more aware. So the homework would be list even 2 things that you're grateful for. And then that helps with you having a sense of wonder and curiosity. And then as the days roll by, that's what you're going to notice. You're going to notice these things that make you feel creative. And I've found that for myself. Another trick is for a while, I didn't have the energy to make anything with clay. So what I did was I made a collage every day. Even 1, 2, or 3 images just ripped out of a magazine.
Wow.
And maybe 1 word.
So that's a baby
That's
step.
a baby step.
Wow.
And I have told that to many people who have had head injuries and have lost their creative impulse. And that sort of does something. It feeds the subconscious these images that then can later help them be more creative, intuitive, in their world.
So, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking, it sounds like you're engaging a different part of the brain that is, you know, it's not the part that we're taught is important, quote unquote, right? It's not the part that, it's not rational. It's not our hyper-rational reality. And yet, it's incredibly healing, and it's tapping into something that is powerful.
Yeah.
That is an innate power that we have. So what I'm thinking, I wonder what you think about this, is, you know, if art is able to do that for folks with head injuries, then when it comes to all the, you know, the trauma that's constantly happening, right? We live in a world that just by living in it, it's traumatizing. Just by turning on the news,
right.
Or, you know, I mean, this is if you're living not in a place where this is all happening to you. But obviously some of us are. We're living in war zones. We're living, right? And so what can that process and tapping into that faculty offer us in those cases, you know, when we're talking about trauma that's being constantly incurred, even low level, you know, or dealing with what's already happened, or the fear around what may happen, you know, what may happen. Um, do you feel that tapping into our creativity can help us process all of that?
I do, definitely. I think creativity, honestly, as far as I see it and experience it, creativity is a direct connection with divinity and spiritual life. Some seeing the world in a bigger picture than this immediate trauma or, you know, crisis.
Yes.
And I do, I mean, I have not lived in a war zone. I am
Yeah.
blessed to live in Boulder, Colorado, of all places, which
Yeah.
is gorgeous. And, you know, we have our issues, but nothing like some places on earth. But I also imagine that in some of these other places that I have traveled to, there is tons of creativity happening there. And I feel like, back to the key is awareness. I think, you know, as as the children are afraid of bombs or whatever it is, they'll turn around and, you know, make a ball out of a tin can or something, or a chicken head that's on the street that becomes their ball game.
Wow.
And I've seen this.
You've seen this.
I've seen this. And I just want to applaud that spirit, because that is our aliveness. That is our passion for living. That is bigger than the fear. I'm imagining. Of course, if I lived there, I don't know what it would be like.
Yeah.
You know, but my hope is that spirit, that evolution, that spark of life, is what will help people and heal them in that kind of situation.
I think that's, you know, I think that's a radical and bold statement to say that that creative impulse, the impulse to live, is bigger than the fear. And yet I absolutely agree with you. I think that's absolutely true. I like also that you're pointing to, it seems like you're pointing to that there's actually more than just the physical, tangible reality going on at any given time, and that we can actually connect ourselves like the way that you did when you were in your, you know, during that accident, in that hyper, you know, aware state, not just of what was going on the physical, but also of what was going on what we call the spiritual, or the, you know, another realm, etheric.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a whole thing we could talk about, you know, this cultures that we live in that really value intellect more than they do creativity or passion or right brain living or intuition. And I myself personally have really found that's where I love to hang out. That's where I live. That's what healed me. And, you know, I often feel like I don't really fit in with these certain circles.
Absolutely.
But look what I create. You know, I have to appreciate that. And I feel like the more that people, all in general, can really appreciate even the small things, like I said, how to cook a meal, or you know, writing a thank you card, or whatever it is. Maybe I think that my experience, you know, from seeing from above, was this place of expansiveness, and I can tap into that when I get upset or into self-doubt or into my shadow realm. You know, it's like there is an expansiveness and spaciousness that overlights my experience. And I also have in my lifetime done a lot of meditation. And I feel like that is another way that can help, as I have found for myself, find that place of stillness and expansiveness that is a comforting place in the midst of chaos.
Do you see a connection, a relationship between the meditation and your art, your creativity?
Say more.
Well, do you find that that still place that you access through meditation, is that also a place that you create from?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, like, I'll be in a studio and 6 hours have gone by and I have no idea what time it is. And it's like this expansive zone. It's the zone, and it's like that blissful place that is just expansive and joyful. And also the act of creating something, even a collage, I think feeds that part of our soul, because we're expressive beings. And the more that we can tap into, honoring that and appreciating what we do create, yes, that will create the space that then hopefully feeds out into our lives and helps us to give space with our other relations and that kind of thing. So I think it spreads.
Absolutely. So, okay, this is something that I've been exploring lately is, we pretty much desperately need to change our relationship to consumerism, right? I mean, that's becoming painfully clear. The science is supporting it, right? And so when you talk and when I observe other artists, when I observe myself as well, there's a tremendous fulfillment that comes from creation, right? So do you think that it's because we're not emphasizing that enough that we're constantly hungry for something from the outside to satisfy us? Is there a relationship there?
That makes total sense to me. Bingo.
Okay, fascinating. So from there, I think it was about 2008 when the schools started cutting the budgets, right? And what went first? Art, music, foreign languages. So I think it's interesting that we, as a society, collectively made that decision, or maybe some of us feel like we weren't part of that decision.
Right.
But regardless, I mean, do you feel that it's important to keep that part of our education process from a young age?
Well, yes, of course. I think it would be so much easier and nicer for people to grow up with that as an umbrella. Right now we don't really have that. So if there's any way that we can add it back in or have the culture value these things, it would just really make a big difference, I think. I'm no politician. I don't know how we would change that at this point. But what I can offer is to hopefully inspire people by my own creativity and creating my own creations and sharing them, but also teaching them and showing them hopefully ways that they can tap into that themselves. Sort of help them feel fulfilled, like you were saying, or grounded, or belonging in the world in these days.
So if we take someone who has never had an artistic education, can they tap into that creativity later in life? Is that,
Absolutely.
And then what boundaries might they face? What's the kind of work that they might have to do to actually access that?
I know many people from my workshops who have, chosen not to follow their art passion, and they've worked in corporate, or they had like a lifelong career, and then when they retire, I want to get back to my art. And the biggest, limitation they have on themselves is their thinking, like their worry and not good enough and all the inner critics. And this is what I always say, showing up with whatever your materials of choice are and just let your muse guide you. I mean, it's easier said than done. And the way that you make it easy for yourself is to keep showing up. And I just show up in my studio, and even if I have no dream that night, or if I have no ideas, it just, I start doing something, and it just, something happens. It always does. I guarantee it.
So is there an element of suspending judgment, or just coming at it with some non-judgment that has to be there for you, in order to feel encouraged to keep coming back?
Interesting question. I personally feel like I can invite those judgments and bring them into the piece, or bring it along with me. Like, that's why we make the inner critic. So for one thing, that's an obvious one. But if I'm making something and this is so ugly, it's not working, that's a thought. And my hands, at this point, my hands just start doing things, It's not like I really need to change the angle of that pose or whatever. It's more like, it's like following my intuition.
So has this, I mean, what I'm hearing is you've actually changed the way you live. Like you've changed the way that you observe life and and approach, you know, maybe since your accident, or maybe always you've been more of that kind of an observer. But I'll ask, I guess, since your accident, I mean, do you feel like this incredibly organic way of being, does that also spill out into other areas of your life, into your relationships, into parenting, into, you know?
I think so. I've never thought of it like that,
Mhm.
but like I said before, I think after my accident, I'm better, in some ways. I'm more flexible. I'm more willing to take risks. I'm way more intuitive. I was psychic for a long time after my accident. I saw
Wow.
dead people, and
Mhm.
they told me things to tell people, and
Mhm.
so I feel like I opened up in a lot of areas. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Do you think that artists are shamans?
I think so. Shamans. What is a shaman?
Well, I purposely left that open to interpretation a little bit. So,
Okay, I'll say yes
yeah.
for sure. I
Okay.
think artists. I think we're all shamanic people in our own journeys because we know ourselves best. We are the ones who know our habits and our patterns and things that keep us stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And shamanic journey. I think creativity is definitely shamanic. Can be.
Mm-hmm.
Because it can lead us, like Persephone, from the shadow world up to the light and let springtime blossom.
Wow.
So I think the shamanic journey is definitely can be part of it. And I don't know that many artists who would label themselves as shamans, because most artists are just making their work.
Yes. Right.
But it's a journey that I think artists take if they're true to their art.
And I guess what I mean is, because there's something that I get from creating, and I create in my own ways. But there's also something that I get, for instance, from coming here and looking at your work, or going to open studios and that's why we go, my whole family. It's kind of what I feel to be a shamanic experience for all of us, and what I feel is that, for instance, you doing your work provides a sort of bridge,
Permission.
or permission, and permission for me to be, for me to explore that part of me, and also a bridge in a given moment between this tangible world where sometimes things can look so bleak, right? And also reminding me that the world of spirit does exist, and that the dream world does exist, and that these are valid, legitimate, real worlds and experiences that I can draw from, and that I can draw strength from, I can draw well-being from, I can draw joy from. I see it happening for my daughter. I see it happening for my partner, and so that's what I mean by shamans, I guess, is, providing a bridge, offering something that can be healing on a spiritual level.
Well, that's awesome to hear. Thank you. And I feel like it has first done it for me. I feel like my creating of it is like my shamanic journey.
Yes.
And then to have someone get it, or to gain some benefit, that's icing.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So back to art being healing. Mental illness, addiction, all of this is, seemingly on the rise, at least some forms, right? I mean, we see a lot that we don't really quite know how to handle, I think, and bless our hearts, all that, all of us have our own, our own fields that we work in the world, be it medical or something else. We're all trying. And, does art have a place in this? Does art have a place in addressing these concerns?
Yes, absolutely. My thought was, I'm just getting ready to go to Ethiopia, and
Wow.
my brother is a surgeon, and he that has a clinic there, and he operates on goiters and gives them other surgeries that they can't get anywhere else.
Yep.
But the local culture historically the shamans of this area have made magic scrolls with paintings of magic sacred objects and symbols that were hung on doorways or hung in the clinic or somewhere, and they were like prayer flags.
Wow.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, whatever you said made me jump to that.
No, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. And what was your original question?
Okay, so you're going to Ethiopia. Your brother's a surgeon there who does surgeries on goiters and things that other surgeries they don't offer there. And they have these cool magical scrolls. I love it. So I was asking originally about, mental illness and addiction, which is, I don't know how we would classify it. Different people classify it differently. But does art have a place in if we were to look at a really, really zoomed out, large scale picture of how we deal with mental illness and addiction in our culture, how we deal with it, does art have a place there? Should it have a place?
I think yes. My daughter actually has taught a workshop called Natural Highs, and it's for young people who have to go through the juvie jail and over addictions.
Yep.
And it's all about finding different ways of natural highs through creativity.
Amazing.
Dance, art, music, writing, creating.
Yes.
And it's been extremely successful.
That's amazing. I need to get more information from you on that, because we do a newsletter called Natural High Friday, which is all about that.
That's
so
awesome.
I need to hook up with your daughter.
You do.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think that these kinds of things, they're not mainstream, and they would be great if they were, but they need to be more, viable and more available actually to people in need.
Why do you think they're not mainstream? I mean, why do you think we forgot the importance of art, of creativity?
Well, that's a big question.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Our world has sped up. There's so much to take our attention. We don't live, hunters and gatherers anymore. So it's not like we sit around a campfire every night and share stories of what happened that day where I was so creative.
Yes.
How I avoided the lion,
Yeah.
So I think it's, what is valuable to people, and the speed and, creativity is not, it can be speedy, but it's mostly not.
It's mostly not.
It's mostly not. And there's a certain appreciation that only comes from that, just sitting still and being with letting your intuition and seeing these colors and things appear before you out of nothing, really. Yeah. It's kind of like magic.
So I'm hearing slowing down.
Well, I slowed down tremendously during my recovery. So that was like hours would go by when I would just be watching the animals, no thinking, just aware of what's happening out there.
It's almost like, I've actually heard it said, I don't have an opinion on this. I think it's interesting that the pace that we operate on, like societally, with all the screens and all the, demands of quote unquote modern life, is actually much faster than the quote unquote natural pace, or the pace that nature moves at. Which, if there was indeed a discrepancy between the pace we move at and the pace that our natural environment moves at, we can imagine that would create some distress.
Absolutely.
And perhaps a disconnection from creativity, if creativity is really a function that comes out of our connection with our, with Earth, with our environment in some way.
There's all different kinds of art.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
there are, there can be just a black canvas, and
Yeah.
that is one way of expression. Then, there's Michelangelo, then there's Mozart, and then there's, John Cage.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so many ways of expressing. And my particular way has been this, and my dreams, and going through my journey, and really honoring the sacredness of dreams. But I think all of them are valid, and they're all creative.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether they're slow or fast,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're black or white,
Mm-hmm.
they are an expression of something deep within,
Mm-hmm.
and satisfying in that way.
I love it. And when I asked about why do you think that we've disconnected from it, I wonder also, like, what I find really fascinating about the creative realm is that, you were talking about you just bring your judgments in. It sounds like they don't really run you, but you let them have their voice, and you let it be.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like, have we been educated in a way that doesn't leave a lot of room for the experience of, like, beyond good and bad? Some experience where it's not about making something that's good or pleasing or gets a certain grade. It's really about the process, which is a really different mindset, isn't it?
Different mindset. The schooling, as you said, has gotten rid of the art programs. The value has been, there's still art around, and it's taught that this is good art, and this is not so good art.
Yeah.
And this is what we should value.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why people would feel restricted or limited.
Yes.
Like, I'm not good enough. I am not Michelangelo.
Yeah.
When I make a drawing, it's not like a beautiful, amazing photograph.
Yes.
So, and I think there's a whole underground thing happening to sort of change that.
Oh, beautiful. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, in the art world anyway.
Good.
And music. But
yeah.
I mean, it's always been underground. I mean, all of us creatives are still doing our thing.
Yes.
Butting up against, the conservative or the culture, that
Yeah.
is so, this is good art.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I think the doors have opened a lot wider to accept art as art therapy, art as process, appreciation of being creative in many, many bigger ways than just drawing a perfect picture.
Right. And the healing that we can get from art it's not about whether something is palatable to the outside world or not. Okay.
Exactly.
So I have one more question, and it's about dreams. So you've obviously created so much from your dreams, and you've obviously given them a place in your life and honored that, and you said honoring the sacredness of dreams. Do you feel that dreams have a purpose?
That's really interesting. I'm actually, when I was having those dreams every night of the piece that wanted to be made, there was a lot of purpose in those. From my own experience, I feel like dreams have really helped me heal myself, because night it became day and day became night during that time. It was like I knew that this is a dream. Where we are living is a dream. And so
Wow. You knew that this was a dream.
Yeah, like when I felt like my head was 12 feet out there, I felt always like I was walking in a dream.
That what we take to be empirically real.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
and
a
it
dream.
was like my thinking process wasn't really working, in an intellectual way. So I was like more moving.
Yeah.
In this kind of veiled fog, sometimes.
Yeah.
And really had to learn how to trust my body, how to trust my intuition, and dreams were a huge part of that. They were more real than waking life.
Wow.
In a way.
Wow.
And so, yes, I think dreams for me, well, dreams have gone through different phases for me. During that concentrated time, it was more my muse speaking to me in that way.
Yeah.
And these need to be made.
Yeah.
And I mean, I made them. I had to make them. And but then there are dreams that sometimes are whole different aspects of me, which I don't really know that much. All I know is that those dreams helped me feel. And I often tell people, people ask me, how can I remember my dreams?
Yes.
So I think people who write down, even a fragment when they wake up, and then do it consistently, they have reported back that their dreams have been beneficial.
Interesting.
Insightful. Inspiring.
Do you think that helps us to remember our dreams more? Like if we get into a practice of writing down even a little bit?
I think so.
Okay. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you want to say?
Well, I just really appreciate you taking the time to interview, and I didn't really I surprised myself a little bit.
That's good.
And also just really want to encourage people to notice and be curious, and to have a sense of wonder about life and about where you are in space and what's happening and how you move through your day. I think the more we are aware, the more beauty we can experience and the more joy we can have. And also, since I'm an artist, find something that you love to create with, some materials, clay or paper or collage or singing or dancing or theater, even like talking to your neighbors. I mean, anything that you do can be done creatively, and it usually is done creatively. It's just a matter of noticing and appreciating it as it happens.
I love that.
Thanks.
Thank you for helping us just become a little more human, a little more in touch with our humanity. Thank you, Caroline.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just love this. This is at BMOCA, the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art, through January, right? January 20th. Okay. And if you get a chance, your website is also, we'll list it on our website, but it is CarolineDouglasArt.com, right?
No, it's just CarolineDouglas.com.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And
Instagram is Caroline Douglas Art.